I started my political career as a young legislative assistant, when I say young, 25, working for Mr. Davis, who was the Premier of Ontario. 1975, my wife Donna's here, we were married in 1976. So some of the best decisions I made when I was young. I'm not sure she feels the same way, but I certainly feel the same. And one day, Audrey will love this, shows you how minority government can work, where I'm sitting in my office, minding my own business, and in comes the Minister of Community and Social Services. Good guy. Doug Wright went on to be president of the University of Waterloo, and he says, we have a problem. I said, what's the problem? He says, well, the standing committee, which has an opposition majority on it, just voted to reduce the minister's salary to $1 and my salary to $1. And I want to know what you're going to do about it. I said, well, Doug, take two things to the bank. One, it's not the law until the legislature passes it. We're not there yet. And two, we're not going to have an election on your salary. Just get used to that idea. So we have to find out why they did it. And the NDP, which was led by Mr. Lewis back then, Stephen Lewis, and others, said, look, you guys are ignoring a very serious problem, and it's called poor older women. POW. Prisoners of war. Poor older women. Their husbands have died. They left no money. There are no pensions. We don't pay them enough, and they are actually using dog food and cat food to top up their diet, which was reality in the 70s in Toronto, high rents, booming economy, people being left behind. So once we found out what they were really angry about, and to be fair, they'd been trying to get somebody to notice until they decided to do what they did, guess what? 2 weeks later, the Honourable W. Darcy McHugh in his pinstripe suit, one of the most Tory, conservative, pro-bank guys, a dear friend, he's now a gentleman in his 80s, stood up and announced the guaranteed annual income supplement for all seniors in the legislature of Ontario. First place to do it, spread like wildfire across the country. Feds did it after a while. Why? Because it actually made eminent good sense. Here was the reason. If for some reason when you filed your taxes, your total income fell beneath an appropriate threshold, you would be topped up. Bingo. No rules, no 800-book manuals, no interviews with welfare officers, no spouse in the house. Just fill out your taxes. We don't believe seniors in Ontario should be living beneath the poverty line. We all shared that view. The NDP and the Liberals brought the government to their senses, and the government, of course, pretended as if they thought about it themselves. That's how those things work. We understand, but who cares? That wonderful line on Ronald Reagan's desk, there's no limit to what you can do if you don't care who gets the credit. Who cares who gets the credit? And we took a 30% poverty range down to under 3% in about 16 months. It's crept up a little, but it's there. So my question to you is, what about everybody else? The OECD tells us that on seniors' poverty, Canada is in the top 5 of the world of doing a good job. But on working age poverty, we're 18th out of 19 amongst developed countries. And what is it that keeps us from breaking that barrier? There's a series of federal, provincial kinds of problems, territorial, which are unique to Canada in a sense. But there's also, I think, a kind of Victorian, judgmental angst, which says there is a moral flaw in somebody who's poor. When all the data tells us close to 50% of the people beneath the poverty line have jobs. Some have more than one. Depending on the cost structure where they live, they may still be well beneath the poverty line. So this is not about folks sitting on their couch watching TV and drinking beer, as some would have us believe. And the cost to us of not addressing that issue, of not dealing with it, is massive in terms of our healthcare bills and our prison bills and our policing bills and our dropout bills and our employment bills, and our literacy bills, all of which are what form the basis of the taxes you and I pay in a few weeks and regularly as citizens every day. So I want to take that guaranteed annual income supplement and I want to build it into the general tax system for all Canadians. And let me tell you why I think that would work. How much is it going to cost? Well, Library of Parliament, the Canadian Council on Social Development says it might cost 30 billion a year, nationally, across the country. But a study done by Don Drummond of the TD Bank indicated that poverty, all those things I referenced earlier, plus the people who don't show up to work, plus the people who can't get into the workforce, plus the people who can't earn, plus the costs of sustaining all that, plus the lack of workforce in our economy, because we're losing so many to the wages of poverty, is costing 6% of our gross domestic product. So, Canada's gross domestic product, as we sit here this morning, 1.4 trillion a year. 6%, you're into 80 or 90 billion per annum that we are losing as an economy, as business people, as investors, as people who want to do well economically and grow the economy because we're doing nothing about poverty other than sustaining the people within poverty so they can manage a little bit from day to day. Now, I'm going to make a proposal which may see me kicked out of the room, Mr. Deputy, and I understand that you may have some tough rules on this, but I'll take a chance. My term in the Senate is up in 2025, so I can be a little bit risky. We have a real example of how this once worked. A town called Dauphin, Manitoba. Agricultural community. Pierre Trudeau, Prime Minister, Mr. Schreier, Premier. They decide in 75, let us try this guaranteed income supplement top-up in a community and let us see how it works. And they did it for 5 years. Everybody signed up. Dauphin was an agricultural community, so you didn't know how you were going to do as a family until the crops were in and the milk was sold and all the rest. But if you fell beneath a certain line, you would get topped up. Now, here's what is interesting, and it's so typical of how sometimes government means well, but kind of loses count. After the program was finished, different governments got elected, and the program only lasted for about 5 years. Nobody invested a penny in analyzing what actually happened. Right? Very typically Canadian. God bless her. There's a wonderful political scientist, Dr. Evelyn Forget, University of Manitoba Health Science Center, who has gone around, went to Manitoba Health Insurance, and got all the boxes of results from the community, anonymized, of course, for that period of time, and went to the police and the Solicitor General, and went to the prisons, and went to the schools, and here's what she has found in her preliminary work. That's just about a year of kicking away at these massive data sets. Hospital admissions, medical admissions, down. Dropouts, down. Registration, post-secondary institutions, up. Police investment, arrests, down. Car accidents, down. Visits to Her Majesty's prisons on a semi-permanent basis, down. All those cost factors that are driving up the cost of running the store for everybody, including the small business person and the banker and the farmer, down. And she's continuing to work because she wants to take those results, see what happens when you put that model on a Manitoba-wide basis, and of course I'm desperate for her to do it on a national basis.